Esteemed Chancellor of the Periyar Maniammai Institute of Science and Technology, our revered Asiriyar, respected Vice Chancellor, members of the faculty, and my dear students. It's a great honor and privilege to address you on this momentous occasion, the 33rd convocation of your esteemed university. Let me begin by congratulating each one of you who will receive your degree today. This day marks an important milestone in your life, a day of achievement, pride, and reflection. I also congratulate your university on its remarkable progress under the visionary leadership of our Asiriyar. I am confident that it will continue to scale greater heights in the years to come. As you step into the next phase of your journey, I wish to share with you 5 lessons that will help you navigate your careers and your life. First, be a continuous learner. Second, cultivate the right attitude. Third, build mental toughness. Fourth, nurture original thinking. Fifth, develop the habit of critical thinking or scientific temper in everything you do. First, be a continuous learner. Dear graduates, in India, Convocation Day or Graduation Day is supposed to mark the completion of your college or university studies. In the United States, it's called Commencement Day. I like the American term better because it conveys the point that your learning process is not over. You are just beginning a new phase of learning, growth, and development. There is a delightful anecdote about the great British astronomer Sir Arthur Eddington. At a party, a young girl asked him, "What do you do?" Eddington replied, "I study physics." "Oh my," the girl exclaimed. "You are still studying physics? I finished studying physics last year." Most of us make the same mistake as that young girl. We think that we have finished our studies once we leave our college or university. The truth is that education is not a destination, it's a lifelong voyage. Another story, perhaps apocryphal, is that Albert Einstein once set the same physics question paper 2 years in a row. When his students pointed this out, Einstein smiled and said, "Yes, but the answers have changed." He meant that the field of physics had advanced so rapidly that the old answers were no longer valid. In today's fast-changing world, the half-life of facts grows shorter every year. Yesterday's truths become tomorrow's myths. Whether you are a doctor, lawyer, engineer, teacher, entrepreneur, or civil servant, you must keep learning or risk becoming irrelevant, a modern-day dinosaur. Every organization has 2 kinds of people: a few who are always learning, and many who have stopped learning and become intellectual deadwood. It is obvious to which category you should belong. Every really successful person I know is passionately curious, forever asking questions, forever exploring, forever learning. We stop growing physically after a particular age, but there is no limit to our mental growth. As Henry Ford said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or at 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young. So stay young by staying curious. Dear graduates, your second lesson is that you should develop the right attitude towards your work. Ask any employer, and he will tell you that while intelligent people are many, truly good employees are very few. Why is this so? Because many people have what we call attitude problems. A bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can't go anywhere unless you change it. It's often said that your attitude determines your altitude, how high you will rise in your career and how far you will go in your life. Someone beautifully captured the difference between winners and losers in these simple lines. Winners have a positive outlook, losers are invariably negative. Winners find a solution to every problem, losers find a problem in every solution. A winner always has a plan, a loser always has an excuse. Winners are part of the team, losers stand apart from the team. Winners say it may be difficult, but it is possible. Losers say it may be possible, but it is too difficult. Let me share with you a remarkable story that illustrates the right attitude to work. It comes from a famous essay by the American writer Albert Hubbard, titled A Message to Garcia. In 1898, when war broke out between the United States and Spain, Cuba was still a Spanish colony. A Cuban revolutionary leader named Garcia was fighting for independence, hiding somewhere deep in the jungle. The American President William McKinley wanted to contact Garcia and enlist his support, but no one knew exactly where Garcia was. McKinley's advisors suggested a man named Rowan, reputed for accomplishing any task entrusted to him. The president summoned Rowan, handed him a letter of introduction and a sealed envelope for Garcia, and simply said, "Deliver this to him." Did Rowan ask, "Where is he? How am I supposed to find him in the middle of a war, deep inside a Cuban forest?" No. Without a word of complaint, Rowan took the envelope, made discreet inquiries, traveled by boat to Cuba, slipped through enemy lines, trekked through the jungle, found Garcia, delivered the message, and returned safely, all within 15 days. Albert Hubbard praised Rowan's initiative and sense of duty, lamenting how few people in the world could be trusted to deliver. In every organization, you will find four kinds of employees: shirkers who avoid responsibility and pass the buck, talkers who promise much but deliver little, bunglers who manage to mess up whatever they touch, they have the anti-Midas touch, and go-getters who take charge, accept responsibility, and get things done. Every institution has all four types. The only difference is in their percentage. The surest way to succeed is to belong to the last category. Be like Rowan, be a go-getter, a doer, someone who can be trusted to deliver. As Jawaharlal Nehru said, "I am not interested in excuses. I am only interested in things done." Dear graduates, your third lesson is this: success is not about winning. It's also about how you handle pressure and how you cope with failure. In other words, it's about how mentally tough you are. Life is never a smooth ride. Failures are part and parcel of life. There are many who go to pieces in pressure situations and take defeats badly. Some even lose the will to live. Remember Winston Churchill's famous words: "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts." Let me tell you the story of a man who failed in business twice in his 20s, coped with the death of his sweetheart at the age of 26, had a nervous breakdown at 27, and lost 5 elections. Yet, at 52, he was elected President of the United States and went on to become one of the greatest leaders of the world. That man was Abraham Lincoln. Consider also the story of the British novelist J.K. Rowling. Before her Harry Potter novels made her one of the world's most famous writers of our age, she was a penniless, divorced, single mother, battling depression and rejection. Her manuscript was turned down by a dozen publishers, but she refused to give up, and today she is wealthier than the English monarch. Or take Michael Jordan, often regarded as the greatest basketball player of all time. Early in life, he failed to make it to his high school basketball team, but instead of surrendering to disappointment, he channeled it into determination. He famously said, "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. On 26 occasions, I have been entrusted to take the game-winning shot and I missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." Life is not a 100 meters dash, it's a marathon. In a marathon, even if you stumble and fall a few times, you can always get up, run on, and still win the race. So don't let temporary failures discourage you or let pressure situations overwhelm you. The great English writer Oliver Goldsmith said, "Our greatest glory consists not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." It is this bounce back ability that determines success. Cultivate resilience and mental toughness, and success will follow. Dear graduates, your fourth key lesson is that you should develop the skill of original thinking or creative thinking. Every major breakthrough in history has come from a handful of original thinkers. Yet, most people remain trapped in routine thinking, unable or unwilling to think differently. Let me share a few striking examples of creative thinking in action. There was a time when computers could be operated only by tech geeks. Then came Steve Jobs of Apple, who changed everything by introducing the Macintosh, the first computer with a graphical user interface and a mouse that anyone could use. But Jobs didn't stop there. He came up with a series of user-friendly devices such as the iMac, the iPod, iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch. Apple didn't invent the computer, phone, or watch. It reinvented how we use them. Google began as a better search engine, but it asked the next question: what else do people struggle with online? The answers: email, documents, maps, translation, storage, education, and meetings became Gmail, Google Docs, Maps, Translate, Drive, Classroom, and Meet. Creative thinking took a single product and turned it into an ecosystem. There was a time when watching a movie meant renting a video cassette or a DVD. Then came Netflix asking, what if people could watch anything, anytime, from the comfort of their house? That simple question killed video rental stores and gave birth to on-demand streaming. Today, Netflix is not merely a distributor, but one of the world's leading producers of original content, reshaping the entire entertainment industry. There was a time when taking a taxi used to be frustrating. Long waits, high costs, limited availability. Then came Uber. It didn't invent taxis, it reinvented them by asking, what if we connect drivers and riders through an app? The result was a global revolution in urban transport. Creativity is not limited to tech giants or to the digital world. Consider these everyday examples. The wheel was invented over 5,000 years ago, but for centuries, no one thought of putting wheels under a suitcase. Only about 45 years ago, someone came to have the simple yet transformative idea, and travel became effortless with the invention of the trolley. In Japan, a shampoo factory had a quality problem. Empty bottles were slipping past inspection, annoying customers. While some managers proposed expensive solutions like X-ray or infrared scanning, one employee suggested a simple fix. Place a fan by the conveyor belt, rotating it just enough speed to blow away empty plastic bottles, but not bottles filled with shampoo. Problem solved at almost zero cost. That is creativity in action. Let me tell you the story of Malcolm McLean, an American truck driver, perhaps the most famous innovator you have never heard of. Before 1956, cargo had to be loaded and unloaded manually, piece by piece, onto ships, trains, and trucks, leading to delays, theft, and breakages. Malcolm McLean asked, what if cargo could be packed into standardized steel boxes that could be transferred between ship, train, and truck by cranes? The shipping container was born. This simple innovation revolutionized logistics and boosted global trade. These examples show that creativity is not limited to artists, musicians, writers, scientists, or inventors. You can be creative in whatever you do. The truth is, every child is born creative. But as we grow up, society and education dull that spark. We are conditioned to value certainty over curiosity, safety over risk, and routine over innovation. I suppose you know the story of Carl Friedrich Gauss, one of the greatest mathematicians of all time. Once, when he was in primary school in Germany, his teacher wanted to take a break. So he asked the class to add all the numbers from 1 to 100. Within seconds, Gauss stood up and said, "Sir, the answer is 5050. The teacher thought he was being cheeky and asked him to get out of the class. About 10 minutes later, the smartest of the remaining boys, adding all the numbers the hard way, stood up and said, "Sir, the total is 5050. Astonished, the teacher called Gauss back and asked him how he had done it. Gauss explained, the numbers from 1 to 100 show a pattern. The first and the last, 1 and 100, add up to 101. The second and the second last, 2 and 99, add up to 101. The third and the third last, 3 and 98, add up to 101, and so on. There are 50 such pairs, the 50th pair being 50 and 51. So adding all the numbers from 1 to 100 is like adding 101 50 times, which is the same as multiplying 101 by 50 or 5050. Now, if you remember your school arithmetic, this is the well-known formula for the sum of the first n natural numbers. S is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. Gauss discovered it in primary school, not by memorizing, but by creative thinking. The great American orator Robert Greene Ingersoll correctly said, "Our educational system polishes the pebbles and dims the diamonds." This problem is particularly acute in India, where students are encouraged to memorize and reproduce passages verbatim from textbooks rather than think originally. So I urge you, ask questions, break patterns, explore the unfamiliar. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Be afraid of never trying something new. Don't settle for imitation. Strive for imagination. Because in the end, It is not the memorizers or the rule followers who change the world. It is those who dare to think differently. Dear graduates, my final appeal to you is that along with creative thinking, you should cultivate the habit of critical thinking, or what Jawaharlal Nehru called scientific temper. You may have noticed that most Indians live a kind of double existence. While they enjoy the material benefits of the 21st century, provided by science and technology, their minds are still ruled by obscurantist ideas of the first century. They respect the fruits of science but have failed to imbibe its spirit. They cling to rituals that defy logic and are an insult to intelligence. They travel by jet aircraft, yet consult astrologers for the auspicious moment to undertake the journey. The famous Bollywood actress Aishwarya Rai was supposed to suffer from Mangal Dosham. So how did the astrologers get over that problem? They first married her to a banana tree and then married her to Abhishek Bachchan. In Solapur, Maharashtra, a 700-year-old Islamic ritual involves dropping newborn babies from a 30-foot tower, believing it brings long life and good luck. In 2013, over 50 people in Kottayam, Kerala, our most literate state, lost their eyesight while staring at the sun, hoping to see an image of the Virgin Mary. More horrifying still, between 2014 and 2021, there were over 100 reported cases of human sacrifice, often on the misguided advice of a tantric promising wealth, health, or a male child. Between 2010 and 2021, nearly 1,500 people, mostly women from lower castes or with mental health issues, were killed after being branded as witches, especially in rural and tribal areas. Extremely silly rainmaking rituals are still practiced in several parts of India. Varuna Yagna, frog weddings, women plowing fields naked at night, children begging unclothed, and mud-smeared children paraded through villages. These are supposed to bring rain. Science is not merely a collection of facts, formulae, and laws. It's a way of thinking, a disciplined habit of doubting, questioning, testing, gathering evidence, and being willing to change one's mind when the evidence demands it. Just as we cannot develop a beautiful garden without first removing all the weeds, so also a scientific culture cannot flourish if the minds of the people are choked by the weeds of superstition and blind belief. The removal of those weeds is the first act of true enlightenment. That's why the Constitution of India makes the inculcation of scientific temper a fundamental duty of all citizens. Don't make the mistake of thinking that just because someone has a science degree, he must be possessing scientific temper. A degree in science simply means that at some point that person memorized a large mass of facts, most of which he has probably forgotten. That's why in India, we witness the strange spectacle of high science coexisting with high superstition. Many a physics lecturer teaches the scientific explanation of solar and lunar eclipses in the classroom, yet he still believes in Rahu and Ketu, the mythical demons supposed to devour the sun and the moon. Many a chemistry lecturer teaches the law of conservation of mass and energy, that matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but only transformed from one form to another, and yet sincerely believes that a so-called God-man can create objects out of thin air. Not long ago, the director of IIT Mandi in Himachal Pradesh solemnly declared that landslides in Himachal Pradesh occurred because people ate meat. And he even claimed to have exorcised ghosts from a friend's house. The director of IIT Madras recently proclaimed that cow urine can cure illnesses because it has antimicrobial properties. But then so do Dettol and phenol. would you drink them? For the approval of any medicine or vaccine, there is a scientific protocol laid down by the Central Drug Standard Control Organization. Cow urine has not passed that test. For such persons, science is just a vocation, a source of income. It has not permeated their thinking or become a way of life with them. Even high office and high education are no guarantee of rationality. In 2021, a sitting judge of the Allahabad High Court wrote in a judgment that the cow is the only animal which breathes in and breathes out oxygen, and that yagnas using cow ghee energize sun rays and cause rainfall. In 2017, a former judge of the Rajasthan High Court declared that the peacock is a lifelong brahmachari. It never mates with the peahen. The peahen conceives by swallowing the peacock's tears. And in 2018, a former IPS officer and Union Minister of State for Education, who holds a PhD in chemistry, asserted that Charles Darwin's theory of evolution was wrong because no one ever saw an ape turn into a man. Our education system seems to be merely transforming an illiterate, gullible person into a literate, gullible person, and an uneducated, superstitious person into an educated, superstitious person. It fills our mind with information, but not illumination. It teaches us what to think, but not how to think. And an educated fool is more dangerous than an uneducated fool. More than 2,500 years ago, Gautama Buddha taught, do not believe something merely because you heard it repeatedly. It is passed down by tradition. It is part of sacred texts. It is widely believed or popular. It is taught by teachers or elders. It is spoken by someone you admire or respect, even if I have said it, or it seems to align with your preconceived notions. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it. This is what critical thinking is all about. No scientist could have said it better. Thandai Periyar expressed the same principle in Tamil. Yaar sollirundhalum, yengu padithirundhalum, naane sonnalum, unadu buddhikkum, podu arivukkum, purundada ediyum nambade. This is the essence of scientific temper. It does not ask you to reject tradition or faith. It asks you to examine every claim through the lens of reason, evidence, and logic. At the national level, the absence of scientific temper can be catastrophic. Climate change denial, despite overwhelming scientific consensus, delays vital policy action and endangers the earth and humanity. Recently, as you know, President Trump gave a speech in the UN calling climate change a scam. Vaccine hesitancy, fueled by misinformation, undermines public health. President Trump's Secretary of Health said that he is supposed to be a vaccine denier. Evolution denial weakens biology and medical research. Racism and casteism often find pseudo-scientific justification, distorting minds and destroying lives. Some people of some caste think that they're innately superior. People of some races think that they're innately superior. All that is rubbish. And fake news spreads like wildfire when people fail to pause, question, and think critically. Scientific temper is equally necessary in your everyday life. If you don't develop the spirit of critical thinking, your life will be a case of gullible travels, and you will be easily cheated by every unscrupulous salesman, businessman, conman, and godman passing by. There are people who peddle fake therapies for almost everything, from how to make you tall, to how to make you fair, to how to make you slim, to how to get a flat belly, all for a hefty fee, of course. These therapies don't work, steer clear of them. There are those who promise money multiplication schemes and urge you to join before it's too late. It is their money that multiplies, not yours. I have known many people who have gone bust by investing with such con men. Steer clear of them too. There are others who pose as God-men as if God had singled them out for special favors, set them above the rest of us, and appointed them to be our spiritual guides. The vast majority of them are charlatans who perform silly magic tricks to fool us into thinking that they possess special powers. Their only aim is to exploit the gullible public. You don't need any middlemen between you and God. Steer clear of all such godmen. Just because millions of people believe in astrology, Nadi Josiam, palmistry, numerology, nameology, tarot cards, Vastu Shastra, Feng Shui, crystal power, channeling, good luck charms, the evil eye, the power of curses, ghosts, demonic possession, homeopathy, faith healing, or any other pseudoscience, it doesn't make them true. As Bertrand Russell observed, the fact that an opinion has been widely held is no evidence whatever that it's not utterly absurd. Your education has been in vain if it has not fostered in you the habit of critical thinking and the ability to distinguish between what is genuine and what is fake. Dear students, I know that young people are not very fond of sermons. It is said that there are two kinds of fools in this world, those who give advice and those who do not take it. I have chosen to belong to the first category, and I hope that you do not belong to the second. My heartfelt thanks to the Periyar Maniammai Institute of Science and Technology and its revered Chancellor, Asiriyar, for this honor. If you live by these 5 lessons I told you, you will not only build successful careers, but also help build a rational, humane, and progressive India. I wish you all success and a life filled with curiosity, courage, and compassion. Thank you.